Okay, so hi, and welcome to the third episode of the Career Hacking Podcast. I'm your host, Hannah, and today we have a special guest. We have Urmi. So, Urmi's great, and we kind of connected on LinkedIn, and she works in finance, and she's got a background in compliance, and a lot of other wonderful things. So, yeah, I'm just gonna kind of hand over to you. So, do you want to tell everyone a bit about your journey so far with your career? And kind of how you got to where you are now?
Yes, it will be my pleasure, and thank you for having me. I come from a background in finance. I graduated with a degree in finance. I also did an honors program in finance, where I had the chance to write a thesis about art and wine investing. And upon graduation, I basically started to work in the financial services. I started with an internship, and I was working mainly in the back office, and I was basically a client support administrator for this big American company. However, I'm based in Canada. The company, we have an office in Montreal. I did that for 2 years, and then I switched and went to compliance. And in terms of compliance, I was an AML analyst for about 4 years. And in that role, I have grown a lot professionally. Like, I got two, three promotions. I eventually became supervisor, and we were basically dealing with the anti-money laundering things. So we were basically doing a lot of KYC, verifying the source of funds of the people investing, and then later I basically moved into investment management, portfolio management, which is what I'm doing currently. And I
Okay.
also have the CFA designation.
Yeah. So that sounds fab. Very exciting. And it sounds like you've been up to a lot, which is amazing. And it's great how you talked about compliance as well, and that you feel like it gave you such a good footing because I worked in compliance too. So I do get that. And it was, yeah, it was interesting. And I think it really is, it's good qualifications to have. It gives you a good understanding of how business works, I think. So you mentioned CFA. So can you tell us a bit more about that? Because I think that's definitely something that's like eye-catching with your LinkedIn. It's part of your title, so congratulations. It's a great qualification to have. So do you kind
Thank
of want to
you.
explain a bit about what CFA is to start off with?
Yes, it stands for Charter Financial Analyst, and basically, it's a designation in finance. It's one of the it's highly recognized in the financial sector, and basically, it consists on completing three exams. So there are three levels: level one, level two, and level three. And each exam consists on a heavy, like on long hours of preparation, because basically the materials are pretty heavy. They tackle different aspects of the financial sector. And basically, for you to go into the next level, you have to make sure that you pass the previous level. So if you're a CFA level one candidate, you can only write the second level if you have written the first level. And basically, once you complete all the levels, you pass them, then you get the title of the CFA charter. And basically, this designation is for anyone who wants to work as a portfolio manager, wants to work in research, wants to be an equity analyst, wants to be a fixed income analyst. And when you're studying for the CFA designation, it touches different topics. So there is accounting, there is alternative investing, there is economics, there is corporate finance. So it touches upon many things, which makes it very interesting and diverse at the same time. But it's also something that requires you to work really, really hard, because the passing rate for each of the level has been really, really low. So it's really about, putting yourself out there and making sure that you are beating the competition, basically.
Wow, that sounds so interesting because I feel like it's something that I never knew too much about. So that's really cool. I do have a question though. So, what is your favorite topic that you did? Because you said like there's quite a lot that's involved in it. What was your favorite part of that qualification?
I don't know if I have a favorite topic, because, and here is where I feel like I'm an outlier, because I enjoyed studying for the CFA for each of the exams. But I think I probably enjoyed a lot the CFA level 2 curriculum because it just went very deep into analysis. Like it was more about valuation. So you were trying to understand why a certain stock price, like you understand why a certain stock price is priced that way. And I think that was the one that I preferred the most. And in terms of topics, honestly, I don't have one, but I think probably like I liked very much equity. I very much liked corporate finance. I also very much liked alternative investment because it's something that is like new. No one really invests into those things. So it's like when you learn them, it's like, oh, wow, that's so fascinating that there are different ways for you to invest in your money. And it's not just the traditional way with stocks and fixed income, for instance. So, yeah.
Oh wow, well that sounds great, and it sounds as well like you're really passionate about it, which is amazing because that's what you want when you're studying. And I can imagine, like you said, a lot of hard work, and you said there's like quite
Yeah.
a low pass rate as well. So congratulations, well done on getting it. I think it's
Thank you.
incredible that you've got that. Um, so why did you choose the CFA qualification in particular? Is it something you've always wanted to do? Is it something that maybe the company you're working for said, "Oh, do you want to do this?" Or was it just personal choice?
For me, it was more for my own personal choice, but it was also at the same time in line with what I wanted to do eventually. I told myself that no matter what career path I was choosing, I was going to do this anyway. And it was just more because when I was in university, I very much enjoyed studying finance. And I remember when I graduated, I was like, oh, I don't want to graduate. Like, I still want to continue studying. And then I started working and I felt like there was a void in my life because I wasn't learning anymore. And so I wanted to, keep that alive. I wanted to keep learning and I knew that I wanted to keep learning finance. So after talking with different people that studied for the CFA exams and did other certification, I came to the conclusion that I wanted to do the CFA. But also, I was also very hesitant because I knew how hard it was. And I was like, I don't know. I'm unsure a little bit because, it's hard. I hear people not passing the exam. I hear people repeating the exams multiple times. There are people that take 10 years to complete and get the charter. So there was that hesitation. But then I told myself, you know what? I still see people who have those three letters next to their name. So it's not impossible. It's a challenge that I want to go through. So then at the end, I was like, you know what? Let's just go with it. I had friends telling me that, you have a drive, just go for it. So that's how I ended up doing it.
Okay. Oh, that's amazing. And I think as well, like you said, it's almost a natural progression from kind of
Hmm.
what you studied before and you don't want to stop studying. I think that's great because that really does show like a lot of ambition. I think especially after university and things because it can almost be, oh, I'm tired of studying, I don't want to do it anymore. And like me, I've not really gone back to university. I've thought about it, but I didn't have that passion, I suppose. Where I was like, yeah, I want to do this many more years of study and dedicate
Hmm.
myself. So it's really cool that you're like, yeah, I've got that ambition, I've got that drive, which it comes through when talking to you, and it really does, and it's amazing to see, and that you've carried on with that qualification. So that's really cool. How long did it take? I'm not sure if you covered that before, but how long did it take in total for these three exams?
So here's the issue because I think I gave my first exam in 2019. And I was supposed to give the second exam in 2020, but it did not happen. It did not happen because there was a pandemic and they postponed the exam twice. So I was almost delayed for a year. I think even more than a year. And you have to wait a couple of months before you can sign up for the next one. And you cannot sign up for the next exam until you pass the previous one. So I got the charter in 2023 April. I gave my last exam this year in February 2023, and then I got the charter in April. So it took me 4 years, but it could have probably taken me less if if there was no pandemic and they didn't postpone the exam so many times.
Yeah, that's understandable. My studying and things that was during the pandemic as well, so it has such a knock-on effect for everything,
Yeah.
especially like you said with examinations. But that's still
Yeah.
great because I think that shows like more determination because despite like those setbacks, you're like, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm determined to get this. So it's really amazing, honestly. So have you got like tips then? So if there's anyone listening who is thinking about doing the CFA qualification or who is currently studying maybe for one of the 3 exams, what's your biggest tips to people who are doing that qualification?
So I always say it is when you're studying for any of the exams for this CFA program, always start as early as you can. Like there are people who do this mistake of like leaving things for the last 2 months or maybe 3 months. And I always say like it's never enough. It's like 3 months is not enough. Yeah, maybe if you have a certain background, then you're lucky that helps you. But I always say that if you want to go safe, always give yourself at least 6 to 8 months of preparation. That's the first thing. The second thing is, yes, there is passive learning, but you also have to learn actively and you have to learn smartly. So every time you're going over a topic, make sure that you're practicing. And I think practice is the key to pass the exam. You have to practice as much as you can, and you have to practice from different sources. You will be provided with materials from the CFA Institute, but if you can get other materials from approved providers, go ahead and do those ones too, because the more practice you do, the more it will help you to internalize everything you have studied. And the third tip I would say is probably the 30 I have a 30, but I'm like, what is this third tip? Hold on. The third tip is probably, oh my gosh. Oh yes, the third tip is to
Mm-hmm.
be very disciplined. And that's something that I have learned a lot when I was studying for the CFA, is that you need discipline to, first of all, you need discipline in many aspects of your life, but I think with the CFA, that's one of the things that you need, because you cannot skip a day or skip a week and be like, oh yeah, we'll do it, the week after, we'll do it we'll do it in 2 weeks, because you have to study every day, but you have to make sure that you're determined enough and disciplined enough to sit down every day and study for the exam, because it gets tiring, it's exhausting, it's mentally exhausting, because there's so much that you have to retain. And so if you want to make sure that you are increasing the chances of passing the exam, you have to be disciplined and determined enough to put that study hour in your calendar and study every day. And that's very fundamental, I would say. And then the last thing is to revise continuously, because there's so much that you have to know that you cannot wait the month before to revise everything. You have to revise constantly from the beginning to the end. So those are my tips.
Oh, well, they're amazing and they're very detailed as well. Like, I really appreciate like you expanding on them. Like, I think the discipline one is a massive thing, and it's actually so much harder than people like ever think with studying. It's like, oh yeah, I can just put that in my calendar. I can kind of schedule in this time every day to do that. But I think it's great when you have the motivation at first. But the
Mm-hmm.
difficult part is when you're tired. It's those days when you're tired, like, when it's winter, like it is now, and it's cold, it's raining, and you're like, I don't want to go to the library. I don't want to pick up that textbook. I don't want to look into this. But I think those are the days when you have to be disciplined because it's like motivation it's going to come, it's going to go. But then it's kind of, that's where discipline comes in. It's those days where you drag yourself to go and do something, even though you don't want
Yeah.
to and you're tired. So I think that's really good, especially the way you described it, because I think you hit the nail on the head really well with
Yeah.
like studying and how it takes a lot of effort, and especially to be like so consistent.
Yeah, because I remember when I was studying because when I was studying and preparing for the exam, I'm working full time. And I remember I would finish work, and the next thing I would do is I would go straight to the library and stay there for a good 3 to 4 hours. So I would do 5:30 until 9:30 in the library, and then I would go home and I would repeat the same thing for the whole week. So I would always force myself to do it, and I had to cut off a little bit some time from other things, like a little bit from my social life, I had to say no to many things. So it is a lot of discipline, and it is a lot of sacrifice. But at the end, I think it's so worth it because it's an accomplishment if you're able to get it. It's like something that only few are able to get. And once you get it, you're like, oh, I did it. I proved myself that I can do it. So it's definitely worth it at the end.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, the fact you worked full time and then we're doing 3 or 4 hours on top of that is, again, quite impressive because that's like a second job, really, if you think about it, especially if you're doing that like every day, to think about how many hours you were actually working every week. Because sometimes I do think, like with studying, especially kind of any, what do you say, like postgraduate, anything like CPD
Mm-hmm.
qualifications, um, they are hard because you'll be working full time doing them and it's up to you. You don't have that time like you would from university, anything where it's like, okay, we're gonna give you a loan to do this and study, or you have a timetable. It's all on you. You have to do it yourself. So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
why with a lot of professional qualifications, anything on from undergraduate, even from high school, college, anything like that, it's difficult because it's up to you to do it and hold yourself accountable. And you don't just need kind of the drive, you need the discipline and kind of to be willing to put that effort in to say, okay, after a full day's work, I'm going to add an extra 2, 3, 4 hours on top of that for something that you probably would, if you had the choice, would choose to do something else. But like you said, it's worth it in the end. And I think that's why people would do things like that, like this qualification. Um, so when you were doing your CFA qualification, were you working in finance at that point or did you work in compliance?
Both.
Okay.
I was in both, but I would say probably the biggest chunk was when I was in compliance. Um, that was in my previous company because I worked in compliance for a little bit more than 4 years, and I know the company was like paying for this for the certification. So I was like, you know what? Why not take advantage of this and take advantage of these benefits that they're offering? And it worked well with my schedule. So I would like finish work and then had time to study. And it was something that, because I know that there are qualifications as well for people who work in compliance, like ACAMS, because I know some of my coworkers did ACAMS. But I think I had a very clear goal with where I wanted to go with the CFA. And so that's why I did most of it when I was working in compliance. And I liked adding that variety because in the morning I was basically doing all these things related to compliance, AML, KYC, and then in the evening I was just focusing on finance. So it was just adding something different into my schedule, basically doing something different and giving me exposure to another aspect of finance.
I think that's really cool. Did you find it difficult though when you were working? I know so there's a big crossover, I think, between certain aspects of compliance and finance, but did you find it difficult then working in a day job that was different? So when I used to work in compliance, I didn't complete it, but I did start my like AAT qualification. I know that is
Mm-hmm.
nothing compared to the CFA, but it was difficult, I think, working in compliance in my day to day role and then studying for something. There was crossover, but it was different later on. It kind of almost like felt like my brain was in two parts. Did you find that so that when your day job was in compliance, you kind of had to be like, right, okay, I'm now going to put on my finance hat for the rest of the day and studying? Did you find that, or was it okay? Was there enough crossover for you?
No, I had to do whatever you just said. Like I had to basically switch and become a finance person in the afternoon because that's the thing with the compliance is very qualitative. The work that you do, like you're reading documents, you are doing some research. It's more like investigative in a way. Whereas with finance, you have a little bit of like it's more quantitative and qualitative.
Mm-hmm.
And so with compliance, it was more qualitative because we were just reading documents and so forth. So there wasn't like any type of calculation where I was like, okay, I could like make the connection with finance. Like I could see how it helped me because we dealt a lot with like private equity when I was doing compliance. And so I could see how that was helping me, but it wasn't even helping me as much in a way. So in the afternoon, I had to basically put that hat on of like, okay, now it's just finance and only finance. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. It's hard to make the switch definitely from one to the other. Like
Mm-hmm.
especially with you said with compliance, because I did KYC as well, and that's what you did, isn't it? It's very, what say, there's a lot of investigation, and I do think
Yeah.
it's quite interesting. How did you find like KYC AML? Did you enjoy that? How did you find compliance compared to finance?
Yeah, it was very interesting. Uh Interesting and also very diverse at the same time because you're not dealing with the same thing every day. Because we basically, what I used to do is that we would have a fund. Usually it was like a private equity fund, and basically we had to AML clear a bunch of investors investing into this fund. So every time you had a different case, like it was a different individual or a different company that you had to clear. So you were always reading and analyzing a different documents. And then there was that added, I would say, interesting part, which was when you had to do a research about someone who, probably committed something and you had to like find out more about it. So that was very interesting because you were able to find out like how they were connected with like money laundering things and how they cleared their name and what are some of the investigation that was open against them and things like that. So in that sense, it was very, very interesting because we were dealing with individuals and investors that were not just based in one country, but they were all over the world. So like I remember like doing this and be like, oh, this is like, it's not boring. It wasn't boring. The only, I would say, bad thing about this is that it's neither black nor white. It's gray, everything that you do in compliance. Because a lot of the times when we had to approve these investors and give the green light for investing into our money, the problem was that if there was an issue, it had to get the approval from someone like the head of the compliance. So that was a little bit the thing because it just went case by case. It wasn't so straightforward. So that was the only thing.
Yeah, and I do agree as well when you said about kind of doing like your further due diligence and things. When you
Yes.
have those people that come across and you're like, oh, I need to discount this person and I need to
Yeah.
investigate a bit more. It is quite interesting, I think, because you get to have a bit of a deep dive and have a nosy at things, and that's what I liked about compliance was it was the kind of what's the words, more advanced cases you'd come across.
Mm-hmm.
So your
Mm-hmm.
everyday ones where it's like, yeah, I just need to discount this person and say this isn't this and things like that. But then there's other cases, especially, I don't know if someone has a lot of common details where things, it could be anyone, anything like that. It was quite interesting. I felt like a little bit of a detective doing KYC.
Yes,
So that was my
exactly,
favourite part about it.
exactly. Yeah, we were like a team of detectives, finding the bad person. Yeah,
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 that was the good bit about compliance. The bit I didn't like was reading the 50-page documents.
yeah,
That's the other side of it, I think. Um,
yeah,
'Cause when I speak to people and I mention, okay, so I used to work in compliance, and granted, I didn't do it for very long, and I did have a lot of other tasks. It wasn't just compliance, but it's kind of like when I did it and I explained to people, oh, I did compliance, I get a lot of people asking, what is compliance? And things like, how do you get into it? Because when you tell people about it, a few people are like, oh, that sounds interesting. But I don't know if it's the most accessible, I think is the right word, career path, because it's almost like, I think for me, I kind of fell into compliance. I went in for a different role and then my skill set was applicable, so I moved into compliance and that's how it happened. What's your journey as in from going into that compliance role? How did you get that role?
So I have a similar story as you. It was never something that I wanted to do. But when I was looking for a job, I had no choice but to look for a job. And I know there was this opportunity, and because I know that they were hiring and they were growing as a company, I saw it as an opportunity. And so that's why I took the job, but I never thought that I would have stayed that long. That's the thing. I never thought that it would have been such a big part of my career. And I don't regret any part of it. I think it really helped me a lot to grow professionally, because I took that time to really develop myself and also to work on other skills as I was doing this job. And I think having compliance, um, it does help you, because even in finance you still have that compliance aspect. Like even in portfolio management you have that, which is you have to do the KYC of the people investing in your company. You have to do the KYC of the people coming and becoming your clients. And so it's a useful um, work experience to have, I would say. Um, but I knew that it wasn't like my end goal. I know that at some point I was like, is this what I want to do? Because I think even with compliance, like, I don't know how far you can go. You're basically doing the same thing forever. And you can grow in your role, but you become maybe the manager of the compliance team. Maybe you become, the AML officer, or maybe you become the head of the department. But it's just that you're pretty much doing the same thing, but you're dealing with different individuals or different institutions or different companies each time. So that was the only thing that's why I wasn't quite sure if that was my path. Um, yeah, and that's how I ended up there. I just needed a job, absolutely. And one friend of mine was like, you know what, there's an opportunity here, try. And so I was very curious. So I was like, you know what, let's try. I don't think it's going to hurt. And then they hired me. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it. So.
Oh, yeah, no, it's very similar to my story, I think, then. And I don't regret working in compliance. I did enjoy it because mine was at a startup company, so it was really good. I got a chance to do a few other things as well, but I did really like it, and I do agree with that sentiment of okay, yeah, if you do compliance, you're gonna get a really valuable skill set,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you take that into any other role that you have because, like you said, if you're screening entities, things like that, it's the
Yeah.
investigation skills.
Yeah.
You'll
Yeah.
always need that, and even just an understanding of how contracts work or policies, because then you learn to read them and how important they actually are, like to protect you and things, or to understand, okay, I can do this person can do that, and I think it's really valuable. um and I think as well, like with the compliance qualifications, it is hard because I know that a lot of career paths kind of leads you to do more like ISO, things like that, and it's going to be like risk assessment. And I suppose
Mm-hmm.
that's not for everyone, especially if you did specialize in KYC AML. It is very much, yes, you're going to screen these people and you become a senior, maybe a manager, and if you're lucky enough, you work hard enough, you might be like the chief compliance officer or something. But it's
Mm-hmm.
very much, I think it's a difficult role to kind of explain how to get into because like you've got the same story as me, that it's you kind of fall into it, and then it, I suppose it depends if you want to stay in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, well,
Yeah.
what do you
I
think?
know.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I mean, I was going to say, I know for sure that the 4 years of experience that I got were more than enough. And it is something that I wouldn't go back to. I think it's good that I have it because it's part of me and I think it helps me, but it's not something that I would have probably wanted to develop as my career, basically.
Yeah, I know how you feel. I think that's the same sentiment that maybe I've got as well. I'm not 100% sure if it's something I go back into. I mean, I'm always open to
Mm-hmm.
the idea of it. And maybe even if there was a role that's kind of a crossover between finance and then compliance, something like that. But what do you think's next for you then? So, like you made the jump from compliance to finance, you got your CFA. So, what do you think's next? Are you just enjoying where you are, or I don't know?
Yeah, I definitely enjoy what I am, and I'm definitely learning a lot. And I think the job in compliance helped me to find out a little bit about myself and what I want to do. So everything that I learned there, I took time to reflect, and I know that I want to stick into portfolio management, which is what I wanted to do in a way. So I very much enjoy doing this because there is a lot of learning opportunity, managing the portfolios of clients and so forth. This is something that I am very much learning, and this is where the CFA comes in, because I'm trying to apply that knowledge into real life stuff. And so for now, I just live the moment, live the present, trying to learn as much as I can. And then I will see from there how I want to develop. I think I have an end goal, which is, probably be a portfolio manager. But it's also something that I don't want to say it's going to be that for sure, because I'm also very much open to what life can offer me. So if there's something else that comes and I want to follow that, then I will also take that into consideration. So that's why there is no definite answer. I'm just open to things. So
Yeah, that's still a great answer. Even if there's like no definite, that's still great. And it's really amazing to hear that you're happy where you are now and you're applying that CFA qualification, because I do think with qualifications it can feel very sometimes theoretical, and you're like, I want to
mm-hmm,
apply this knowledge, how do I do it? And then it can be
mm-hmm,
tricky if you then go into a role and it's not always applied. So it is good that
yeah.
you're constantly using that knowledge and building on that. So that's amazing. What do you think's next for you then, in terms of maybe not necessarily career wise, but things like LinkedIn? Because I know that you're quite big on LinkedIn and you're doing all these magazine articles, and you have a very very impressive like social media presence, and you have your YouTube channel. So just a quick plug that if anyone wants to learn any more about CFA or about Urmi, then you can check out her YouTube channel. I'll link it in the comments and things so you can have a look. But yeah, what do you think's next for you then? I suppose outside of your career and outside of finance and CFA.
I do very much. I'm very much involved with many organizations where I volunteer, and one of the things that I very much support is women's empowerment, and that's something that I've been doing for quite some time. So I mentor young talents, female talents who want to study and work in finance, and that's something that I'm very passionate about. I very much enjoy, sharing knowledge to other people. Um, I would like to do also, well, I still want to continue doing this, and I'm also part of the Toastmasters Club. And my goal is to do a TED Talk, which I've been saying, I don't know since when, but I keep saying it. And I do want to give a TED Talk eventually, because I watch many of those and they're so inspiring. And so every time I'm watching one of those, I'm telling myself, this is what I want to do. So I work really hard on my public speaking skills to, become a better public speaker, to be able to deliver a message in front of a big audience. So that has been something that I've been working on. And I also hope to write another book, because I do have a book, but I do want to write a second one, which is like, it's more like a work in progress type of thing, but I do want to write it. So that's also my other plan.
Oh, that's amazing. I think the TED Talk one, oh, I fully support that. I think you'd be wonderful at it. What kind of topic, if just off the top of your head, if I said, okay, you're going to do a TED Talk tomorrow, what topic would you choose? What would your headline be?
That's the thing. I don't know, because I keep thinking about it and I'm like, what do I want to talk about? Because a lot of the TED Talks that I watch, or that I have watched, some of them, they're like, they provide tips, some of them share a story, some of them it's very personal. So I don't know where I want to go with it. I just know that I want to be on a stage in front of a bunch of people, and just talk. That I know that's what I want to do, but I don't know to talk
Oh,
about what. So that's where I'm like always struggling, because people ask me that question. People ask me whatever you just asked me, and I'm like, I don't know. I just know that I want to stand up and walk in front of a crowd.
yeah. Oh, well, I don't doubt you'll do that one day, and I'm sure it'll be amazing whichever topic you decide to talk on. But that's great. So, You wrote a book. I didn't actually know that from my little investigation when I looked at your LinkedIn. So, what's your book about, and what's your second one going to be about?
So my book is called Discovering Your Identity: A Rebirth from Interracial Struggle. And basically the book is basically about me. And I talk about myself being a third culture kid, and I make a comparison between the Italian culture and the Bengali culture because I was born and raised in Italy and my parents are from Bangladesh, and often these two cultures were very much in conflict. So I struggle in finding a place and I struggled in fitting in. And for a very long time, I felt like I was not fitting anywhere, but my job was to find a place for myself where it was a fusion of the two. So I had to create that box where I was fitting and I didn't need to fit any of the two other boxes. So talk about that from a perspective of a South Asian woman. And my second book, I still want to talk about this, but more like a continuation. And I want to just talk a little bit more about, the differences between the two culture and what it means to be a third culture kid.
Okay. Oh, that's amazing as well. I didn't realize, but that's so cool because I think that you've probably you're creating a space for other people as well. When you're doing that and you're sharing your story so that other people who feel the same way and they might feel quite okay. I feel isolated because I don't know how to fit all these like different cultures together and things that you're then creating a space to be like, yeah, I've been through that, so they know someone else, and they can read about their story. So that's amazing. That's really cool. So, did you grow up in Italy then?
I did.
Yeah, and then you moved to Canada. When did you move to
Yeah.
Canada?
Ages ago.
Yeah,
It's been more than a decade.
ages ago. Oh, I don't. Okay, how many languages do you speak? I'm very curious about that.
I always say 4.5 because Spanish is the point 0.5 that I'm trying to make a whole, but
Yeah.
it's been a struggle because I was just telling this to someone. I said, I understand very well when someone is speaking in Spanish because I also took a bunch of like classes. I was able to like do presentation, but then I'm like, I'm not practicing it, but I listen to podcasts. However, the issue is that I'm not the one speaking it. So that's why I feel like I'm feeling a little bit stuck. But when I listen to people speaking, I'm like, I understand what they're saying. So that's the only thing. So the point 0.5 is Spanish, and then there is Italian, Bengali, English, and French.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, I think it is. It's very difficult with languages. If you don't use it, you will lose it. And I know it's a bit cheesy to say, but it's true. I learned Spanish a very long time ago. I did it at college and then I left it. I kind of parked it when I went to university. Like, I'll pick it up
Mm-hmm.
eventually again. And I've only just got
Mm-hmm.
into it. So I think it really is. It's hard to practice it, especially if you're in a country where people might not necessarily speak that language all the time. Because I know here in the UK, I don't think Spanish is very common. I only know one other person that speaks it, like, as in who wants to practice it and who's learning. So I can imagine with Canada, the main one's probably French and English. But it's amazing that
Yeah.
you're still learning it. And I like how you said it's 4.5. That's great. I think I'm going to steal that and be like, I speak 1.5. I speak English and a bit of Spanish. A bit of Spanish. Hablo un poquito.
Un
Yeah, I
poquito,
don't
sí.
speak much, but that's it. Okay, well, thank you for your time today. I think we should wrap up there. But honestly, this has been such an interesting conversation, and I think I've learnt so much. I think anyone who's listening has, and I think you've spoken so well, and it's just been so motivational to like speak with you and just hear about your story and everything. So it's been wonderful. I hope you've enjoyed your time on the episode, and thank you again for coming on. It was, yeah,
Thank you.
amazing. Is there
Thank
anything else
you.
that you'd like to say, or have you said everything?
I think I said everything.
That's okay. That's all right. I just wanted, just in case there's anything else. But yeah, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who's watched and or who's listened. This one should be available on YouTube, Spotify, and I'm gonna try and get it on Apple. Um, there should be also a new episode coming out with the Streetwear Studio soon. and it should be available by the time this is uploaded. So thank you for listening and thank you for supporting the podcast.